been lied to. By Japan, by anime, mostly by my own lack of research, and I want to tell you about it. Maybe everyone but me knew this already, and this video will just make me look stupid, but it is what it is. The quote, "The moon is beautiful, isn't it?" is pretty well known in anime and anime-adjacent spaces. Just off the top of my head, I've heard it in Demon Slayer, A Silent Voice, not that I would ever watch BL, but it's said in this one, and I'm pretty sure there's a whole anime named after the quote. I'm sure you've heard it before. It's an indirect way of expressing your love to someone, created by the very influential Japanese author Natsume Souseki. You know, Kokoro, I Am a Cat, or because I'm sure he's in the thumbnail of this video, that one guy from BSD who is supposedly really important but also kind of doesn't do much. And that's where my knowledge on the quote ended, until I went to make this video. I have this series where I talk about classical Japanese literature and how it's been reimagined in modern media. And I thought this quote would be the perfect topic for the next video. I'd read the story it's from, talk about some examples, and clickbait people with BSD. Perfect. Until one Google search later throws all that out the window. First of all, the source of this beautifully romantic quote. A novel, a short story, a poem? Nope, it's a random joke Natsume made to some students he was teaching. The story goes like this. Natsume was guiding a group through a translation of some kind of English story into Japanese, when the phrase "I love you" comes up. The students do the obvious and write out the literal Japanese translation, but Natsume comments that a Japanese person would never be so direct when confessing their feelings and that a more roundabout phrase would be correct, jokingly suggesting they should use the now famous phrase, "The moon is beautiful, isn't it?" That context is severely less romantic than I was imagining. And what's worse is, it's probably not even true. There's no source for this anecdote. We don't know who originally shared the story or who the students he was talking to were, or if there were any students to begin with. Some websites say that he was personally working on a translation of something and decided to use the phrase instead of "I love you." And these websites are just as credible as the others because, again, there's no source. There's even this one article that claims the quote comes from Natsume's last complete novel, Grass on the Wayside. This gave me some hope back for the romanticism of the quote, but nope, definitely not true. You know how I know? I just read the novel. In English, the word moon is said an impressive 0 times. Maybe it's just a bad translation. Well, I checked the Japanese text too, and nope, it's not in there. I don't know what whoever wrote this article was on, but isn't it crazy how someone can just lie about something so easily disprovable? According to this one person on Reddit, the earliest mention of the quote is in this book called You Can't Be a Sci-Fi Writer Either by Toyota Aritsune in 1979. Now, not trusting random people on the internet, I bought the book myself for a whopping $2. And to my shock, this person was actually telling the truth. But it's not the same quote. While we now know it as "The moon is beautiful, isn't it?" 46 years ago, Toyota claimed it was actually "The moon is so blue." About halfway through the book, Toyota states that in order to be a good translator, you need to know when to translate literally and when more nuance is required. He brings up a story about Natsume Souseki as an example. Quote, "It is well known that in his English classes, Natsume Souseki would have his students translate 'I love you.' The students would come up with translations like 'I'm in love with you' or 'I like you.' Are you guys really Japanese?" Natsume scolded. Japanese people would never say something as bold as that. It should be translated to 'The moon is so blue.' Indeed, if a man and a woman of the Meiji era were to have a private rendezvous, they would say 'The moon is so blue,' indirectly meaning 'I love you.'" End quote. There are no other mentions of Natsume and the quote in the book before or after this. Yes, it's true this book does talk about the quote, but it's also literally impossible for it to be the earliest mention. Toyota was born 22 years after Natsume died. It's not like he was there to hear it himself. And there's a 63-year gap between Natsume's death and the release of that book. Toyota had to have heard it from someone, but he did not care to cite his source. So now, not only do we still not know if the story is true or not, we now know that the modern day version of the quote is completely incorrect anyway, and also I'm out $2. All this is to say, I don't really know. I'm just disappointed that something I thought sounded so beautiful and made me feel smart whenever I picked up on the reference turns out to be at best a dumb joke and at worst just a total lie. But at the same time, this whole situation is really amusing. Let's say it is true. The Natsume's most famous quote, which has been retold for generations, was not taken from any of his incredible high-effort works, but rather a one-off joke he made to some of his students. If it's not true and Toyota just made it up, then he created one of the most popular quotes ever and accidentally gave all the credit to a long past author instead of taking it for himself. And then, regardless, at some point, either because people decided the original quote wasn't pretty enough, or it was retold too many times like a bad game of telephone, it morphed from "the moon is so blue" to "the moon is beautiful, isn't it?" Fundamentally making crediting this quote to either Natsume or Toyota incorrect. So technically speaking, there should be a third person who originally wrote the current version of the quote who deserves credit for all its impact. Will we ever find that person? Probably not. This video is a chaotic mess, but if anything, I hope you've learned to always do your research. And hey, now I'm a proud owner of this random commentary on the Japanese sci-fi scene of the 70s. Thank you for your time.